It was a Christmas day full of shocks for the Dingle family in Emmerdale this year. A fitting festive season for how 2025 has gone so far. At the center of the Dingle drama was Charity Dingle, Emma Atkins, who has been harboring an enormous secret. The baby she's carrying might not be who everyone thinks. Charity is supposedly acting as surrogate for granddaughter Sarah Sugden, Katie Hill. But in actuality, the baby isn't the one she and Jacob Gallagher, Joe Warren plant. Conceived through IVF, the hopeful paperwork, the carefully orchestrated biology of consent and cooperation. Those were the pieces Charity had set in a public window. But the true thing, the raw, private thing, fit nowhere in those boxes. The baby had been conceived in a reckless, overheated night with Ross Barton, a moment Charity now called an accident she could not unmake. She had accepted the surrogate narrative to hide from herself what she feared most, that she had crossed a line she could never step back from. Vanessa Woodfield noticed the smallest tremors in Charity's smile. Vanessa caught breath mid-sentence and steadied a wineglass like a ship's wheel. She had been told, in the conspiratorial way women tell each other about dangerous truths, about that night and its consequence. She had sworn, with the solemnity of someone who had been saved by a secret once, to keep quiet. But Christmas loosens more than tongues, it loosens resolve. Vanessa's fingers, warm with brandy, betrayed her. Someone handed her a mince pie and her laughter came out a little too loud, a little too bright. "Stop it, Van," Charity whispered beneath the tangle of tinsel and neck. "Not now." Vanessa's eyes darted, apologetic and mischievous. "You say that every year," she said. "But for what it's worth, Char, you look blooming. What are you worried about?" Charity only smiled. Mac Boyd, her husband, sat at her side like an island of patient ordinariness. He rubbed the small of her back and spoke about the roast, the crackers, the kids, the weather, as if the world could be reinforced by domesticity. For a moment the room rebounded into the safe. Jokes about faulty sprouts, an argument about the Christmas pudding, a scolding about someone's boots. But secrets are heavy with gravity. They bend the air around them until something snaps. Later that evening, when the candles had burned low and the front room was a dim pool of TV light and shared smugness, Charity and Mac settled into the sofa. Mac's warmth was a balm, the kind of comfort that could almost convince a woman she had done the right thing. Charity leaned, made a face at a corny soap plotline, but her attention flitted like a moth between the television and the door. No one noticed the envelope slip through the letterbox. It was pale and unremarkable, the color of an office file, and it slid across the mat as casually as a single leaf falls in autumn. If it had a purpose, it was to arrive unseen and then become seen. When Mac went to make another cup of tea, Charity crossed the room and found it. Her name was not on the front. There was only a typed address and a thick, aching precognition that anything arriving unannounced at Christmas could not be benign. Her fingers trembled not from the cold, but from a premonition. She slit the flap with a fingernail. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small photograph. A snap she recognized with the sick certitude of someone who has been unmasked in the mirror. The photograph showed a pair of hands holding a pregnancy test. It was blurred enough to be plausible, sharp enough in the center to be dangerous. Below the image was a message, printed in neat font like a bank statement. "We know. We will sell this. Pay us." Charity's stomach dropped. The room seemed to tilt. For a moment noise blurred into white noise, and the only thing she could see was the photograph and the neat, cruel words below it. Mac returned to find her pale, the paper crumpled in her fist. "What is it?" he asked. "Nothing," she said, but the nothing was no longer an option. Secrets cost money, and some people in Emmerdale had a talent for making those costs immediate. Across the village, the Christmas lights on the bridge blinked like unblinking eyes. Down at the Rovers, people tried to be merry and exchanged furtive looks. Rumor is a slow-moving beast that speeds up in winter. By midnight, someone at the corner shop would be chewing over a whisper and making it into an evening story. April Windsor's Christmas had a different soundtrack. There was no warmth in every breath, only the hard, metallic clink of coins being counted in the dark pockets of other people's hands. Her smile on the day was practiced into something brittle and precise. She laughed at jokes she had no business understanding and allowed her father Marlin to hold her close, as though he could press the shape of their family into a stable memory. The truth was a map with missing roads. April's year had looped through terror and grit. Getting out, getting pulled back, being moved like a pawn, told to be quiet as if silence could be a shield. Ray Walters was the kind of man whose charm hid the sediment of cruelty. He had the face of someone who could get a good deposit and leave no receipt. Celia Daniels, on the other hand, was a slow-burning furnace. She managed people the way a gardener tends bonsai, precise, severe, with an eye for shape. Where Ray smiled, Celia planned. Where Ray lured, Celia trapped. Marlon had discovered the shape of their enterprise after April disappeared for a week and came back with eyes that had not slept for months. He and Rona had unspooled the thread, tracing payments, following footsteps, making mistakes and then more mistakes. When they confronted the truth, they had the kind of rage that turns your chest into a hard stone. They wanted April back in the way people want life back, after watching it pushed to the edge of a cliff. Celia did not listen to pleas. She did not soften. Instead, she calculated. The blackmail was neat. £2,000 a week to keep April shielded in the minimal way that traffickers pretend is safety. It was not ransom, it was a toll, and one that would empty the Dingle coffers into Celia's pockets and Ray's. In her pragmatism, Marlon paid. In the small, private places where shame whispers, he called it sacrifice. April watched him pay. She saw the way his shoulders hunched as he handed over envelopes. She saw Rona's eyes hollow a little deeper each week. She felt the tilt of the house toward debt and worry. She heard her younger cousins whisper about what it meant to have money fly out of a family like breaths in winter. So when Celia gave April the ultimatum, come or stay, she was not surprised that it was framed as a choice. Celia loved to pretend to be kind in the same breath she gave a threat. The message arrived on Christmas Eve. By morning you decide. By the time the village had finished unwrapping presents, April had her future laid out like a menu in front of her. There was no winning option. She went to Marlon at the hearth. For once, the old man did not have the courage to argue. He had already been beaten by the math of their lives. The money took its chair at the table and then stood on it, and the man who loved his daughter could not climb over the rising tide of bills and mortgages and calamitous small-town luck. "Dad, I can't let you keep doing this," April said, and her voice was small and steady. "You can't keep giving them money. I can work. I can find another way." Marlon's hand shook. "You'll be all right, girl," he said. The lie felt as much for him as for her. April thought about running. She thought about the ways she had already tried to escape, slipping out of doors, hiding in bins, begging strangers for lifts, and the cold reality that the world was not always a refuge, even when you did everything right. Ray and Celia knew things. The names of places she'd tried to go, the people she trusted, the routes she would take. They had anchors in the net of the outside. Sometimes being young is not the same as being safe. So she made the choice that was also a surrender. She called Celia. When the line connected, Celia's voice was all tenderness and clinical precision. "You made the right choice," Celia said. "There's a van at the old mill tonight. Be ready to leave. You'll be looked after." April's fingers went icy around the phone. There was a reason Celia's entreaties felt like a rope. They pulled everything with them. She breathed, and the breath was a small betrayal. "Okay," she said. "I'll go." Marlon listened from the hallway, and his world compressed into a single soundless cedar-colored drop. He wanted to scream at the cruelty of a universe that would take his daughter and call it a transaction. He wanted to throw Celia into the street and set the mill on fire. Instead, he folded his hands around the empty teacup and watched her walk into a future he could not afford to fight. Back at the Dingles sofa, Charity sat with the photograph on her lap. The envelope had felt like a splintered nail going through wood. The photograph was the rusted head that would not come out. She thought about who could have taken that picture, who could have typed those neat extortion words. Her mind ran through a Rolodex of grudges. Old enemies, spurned lovers, entrepreneurs of misery who made fortunes off other people's shame. The village had more than its fair share of both. The phone rang. Charity's name flashed across the screen in Vanessa's handwriting. For a second she considered lying, ignoring, hiding the picture under a cushion and pretending it had not burned the night. But secrets have a way of slipping like water, finding the smallest crack and sliding out. She answered. Vanessa's voice was high with panic this time, not the party tremor of earlier. "Char," she said. "I think someone's been asking around the Rovers. I heard 2 blokes, men I wouldn't trust with a parking ticket, saying something about a test, about selling the thing." Charity's heart tilted over. "Who did you hear?" "No idea. They were half drunk. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just gossip. You know how people talk." Vanessa's words tried to be ordinary and failed. "Char, are you sure you want to keep this boxed up?" Charity's answer came from a place so tired she did not recognize herself. "I don't have a choice," she said. "Not when it's not just mine." Vanessa's breath hitched on the line. "If anyone finds out, there'll be trouble." I can't be around when people start sniffing. I'll do what I can. But Char, you have to be careful. Charity whispered the name of the man she had once allowed herself to touch like a dare. Ross Barton's name was a small stab on the wall. It both soothed and stung. Ross was known for being reckless and redemptive in equal measure, and for making messes that took other people a long time to clean up. If his name ever connected to her, the fallout would be messy enough to get the whole street talking. In the kitchen, someone burned the mince while the television babbled about winter sales and celebrity divorces. The Dingles laughed as if laughter could rescue them from what waited in the envelope. But some laughter is a seam, and Charity's was now stitched with a thread of unease. As the night closed around the village, Celia and Ray made their final checks. The van at the old mill purred like an animal. Ray shined his shoes and smoothed his hair like someone who delighted in appearances, because appearances paid. Celia, in contrast, wore a long coat and no ornament. She reviewed the list: routes, numbers, names of contacts who would make the moving of one young life into a new territory seem mundane. "This will be easier if she goes willing," she said. Ray grinned as if that was a joke. Willing is what girls say to make the world softer. It's better for business if they cooperate. They were businesspeople who traded in human spoils. Their coldness was not flashy, it was methodical. They had learned the old truism that fear works better than force if you make your fear constant. The village was a market, the world outside was the export plan. When April stepped out into the sleet, suitcase in hand, the stars were nothing but indifferent pinpricks. She walked to the van like a woman stepping into a photograph. She kept her face like a stone and let no one see the rattle under it. Marlon watched from the doorway until the van pulled away, and the taillights blinked like a heart trying to find rhythm. He banged his fist against the frame of the door and then leaned against it, palms flat on the wood, as if to hold the house together with his body. Charity had no illusions that an envelope was the end of it. She had been in too many fights, loved too many dramas, to imagine this was the finish line. The problem was not the photograph itself. It was the people who would find a way to monetize the worst things about other people. The village, like any small place, had a subterranean economy built on shame. Charity had spent her life trying to keep her secrets under the floorboards. The envelope suggested that the boards were being pried up. She called Vanessa back. They made plans in hushed tones. Vanessa promised to talk to someone at the Rovers she trusted, someone who owed her, and to see if the blokes were professionals or penniless opportunists. Charity made a decision as swiftly as panic can sharpen resolve. She would buy time if that's what it took. She would make the offer the envelope demanded, or at least stall. Money is often the first purchase in a sordid transaction, time the second. Mac watched her talking on the phone, watched her fingers crumple the photograph until the edges whitened. He had never been the sort to spy on secrets. He had married into them. But tonight, when he saw Charity's face, he felt a current of ferocity that belonged to another man. He sat forward and put his hand on her knee. "We'll get through it," he said. She nodded, because to say anything else would have been to admit the unimaginable, that the secret might be a reef she could not steer past. The village slept uneasily. Celia drove her van into the dark like a blade. Charity made a payment that would only pause a clock she could not stop. April sat in the back of Ray's vehicle, jaw set as the road took her further away from everything she knew. The holidays had become a ledger. Debts to be paid, favors called in, choices made under the weight of love and fear. The Dingles had always been resilient, stubborn, loud, impossible to forget. But resilience does not equal immunity. Somewhere between the Rovers and the bridge, a figure watched the van pass and made a decision. The envelope had not been anonymous in the end. It had been planted with purpose. And the person who had folded that paper into Charity's life was not someone who wanted money. They wanted leverage. They wanted to shift power. As dawn thinned the night into a brittle winter blue. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Emmerdale Echoes.